Welcome to my channel, and I'm back with you once again with another video of Microsoft Flight Simulator. With the Sim Update 15 of the Microsoft Flight Simulator, the Airbus A320 Neo by iniBuilds is available, which is an enhanced version of the default Airbus A320 Neo which comes with the Microsoft Flight Simulator. And in this regard, I'm making a series of videos in which I'm trying to break down all the information related to this plane into different videos so that it's easy for you to look for a specific information on my channel. So far, I've done 6 videos for this plane, and this is going to be the 7th one in which I will tell you how to configure the electronic flight bag or the tab of this plane, and plus the MCDU or the multifunction control and display unit of this plane. This video will be for the beginners. Whenever I make videos, I always keep this thing in my mind that the beginners will be watching it. So that's why I will be just touching the basics, and I will just take you through all the procedures to configure the EFB and the MCDU. I'm going to divide this video into 3 parts. First, I will tell you how to make a flight plan in the Simbrief, because unfortunately, the Microsoft Flight Simulator's flight planning tool doesn't work with this plane. You have to have a Simbrief account and you have to import the flight plan from the Simbrief. And then you can configure the electronic flight bag and the MCDU for this plane. So I'm going to tell you about the Simbrief, then I will come back in the plane and discuss the electronic flight bag, and then afterwards I will tell you how to program the MCDU. So this is the interface for Simbrief where you can make the flight plan. It has been around for a very long time, and I think I've been using it for the last 5 or 6 years for flight planning. It has now been acquired by Navigraph, and now it has got more features than it used to have before. You can make your account for free, but remember this thing that you should have a Navigraph subscription in order to update the ARAC cycle. It is actually a database which has all the information of the waypoints and the airways, and plus the departure and arrival procedures for different airports. Microsoft Flight Simulator's ARAC cycle is always updated. So whenever you are making a flight plan in the Microsoft Flight Simulator and your ARAC cycle is not updated over here, you might have a disconnect. So in this regard, you should have a Navigraph subscription. Maybe you can just have it for one time, and then you can cancel it, update the ARAC cycle, and then I think you can just carry on with it for the next 6 months or 1 year, because people have been out asking me lots of questions. But for me, I have a continuous subscription of Navigraph, because actually I'm using the Navigraph for charts and for flight planning and for everything. So I always have the Navigraph subscription handy with me. You have to go to this option, New Flight over here in Simbrief, and then you will see this page. So the departure will be OMDB. I'm using this route from Dubai to Qatar because it's a very good route. It also has a discontinuity in it, and I will also explain it to you how to fix the discontinuity in this plane if you get one in your flight plan. And plus, once you're arriving at Qatar, there will be so many constraints. So when I will be doing a complete video, you will know that how this plane actually goes through the constraints for the arrival. And now I will enter the arrival airport, OTHH, which is for Hamad International Airport in Qatar. Alternate, this is the alternate airport. So let's say if you try to go to another airport, it will automatically pick it up for you. Otherwise, you can specify it yourself. So if you're familiar with the area, you can specify the airport that you want. Let's say I would like to land back at Abu Dhabi Airport. So that's why I've entered the ICAO code for Abu Dhabi International Airport. Now we have to select the aircraft type. If you go here, you will see Airbus A320 251N, which is for the Neo. Initially, when this plane was launched, it was not coming in this option, variant or airframe, but now it's available. As you can see, iniBuilds MSFS A320 Neo V2. So it's there. You can select it. And then there is this number which you have to enter. It's the cost index. It's actually a number which determines the rate of fuel burned during the flight. So if you go with a small number, less fuel is burned, plane goes at a slower speed, but the range of the plane increases. And if you enter a big number, let's say 70, 80 or 90, the plane goes at a very high speed, but the range of the plane decreases because it is burning more fuel. For this plane, I'm using the cost index of 30. But remember this thing, it's kind of a tricky thing. And with this plane, it works a lot, because if you're entering this number 30, then the speed on the autopilot is really less. So if you are, let's say, flying at or below 10,000 feet, the speed will remain at 250, depending that there is no constraint during the departure. But after 10,000 feet, when the plane climbs at 35 or 38,000 feet, as you have selected a small number, the rate of climb will be less. So it will take a long time for the plane to actually reach the top of climb. So this is a bit tricky. You can do multiple flights and then you can see on which route, which cost index suits you. But in real life, it is actually for the airlines. So you can even set 20 to save fuel. Now, this section is automatically updated. No need to change this. And now coming to this point, the scheduled block time is coming. So total time for this flight is 1 hour and 15 minutes. So this is the departure runway. And if you click this, you will see the weather, and similarly for the arrival runway. You can change it accordingly, but recently what I've started to observe is this, that Simbrief automatically picks up the runway which are in use. So depending upon the weather and the wind, it actually selects the runway which is actually in use. So we'll just keep it like this. And the cruising altitude, so for this flight I will be cruising at 23,000 feet. Because it's a short flight, I cannot climb up to 38,000 feet. So that's why I will keep it at 23,000 feet. Otherwise, you can change it as per your flight. Passengers, I will be carrying full passengers. You can select it or you can even keep it auto. And then freight, you can again select full or you can select auto. And payload, always change it. You can keep auto, none in full. So for the zero fuel weight and the payload, everything I've kept everything auto. Now once you do that, you will see that there is this interface which says route. Now over here you have the complete flight plan, and this flight plan has 4 parts in it, which is the standard instrument departure or the SID, the arrival, which is the standard terminal arrival, and then you have the waypoints and the airways. Over here on the right hand side, if you look at, you have suggested routes, so you can even change them. So as per your convenience, you can always change them, and you can have a different flight plan. But as a beginner, if you're not really familiar with all this, just leave it like this. Whatever Simbrief suggests you, you always just fly with it, because this is what I'm actually doing. Now, before we proceed further, I would just like to tell you what is a SID, what is a star, and the airways and the waypoints. This first point is actually a SID. It is a standard instrument departure. So once you are flying out of an airport or a runway, you don't simply fly out of a runway. You have to follow certain procedures. And this SID actually gives you different procedures. Now if you look at this flight plan, this SID is actually taking you to the first waypoint, which is NABIX. So let's find this waypoint over here. Now this is NABIX. Now once you are flying out of OMDV, you're going to DB 570, 586, 587, DB 410, LOPAP, and then you go to this point. Now over here, you will not see all these points because this is a departure procedure which is specified by this standard instrument departure. Similarly, once you're arriving at an airport or runway, you have a star, which is standard terminal arrival. So Tosna, this is the point, and after this you can see all these waypoints. They are not mentioned over here because they are part of the star, which is TOSN 1R. So then you come over here. So you have an arrival procedure and a departure procedure. And for the arrival, you have arrival and plus then the approach. Approach is actually a procedure to land at the runway. So at this point, MUXT, the arrival procedure finishes, and then afterwards you will go for the approach. Now anything in between, as I've told you before, is a waypoint and airways. Now anything coming in alphabetical value is your waypoint. So NABIX, OXARI, and TOSNA. These are the waypoints. And anything appearing in alphanumeric value is your airway. So P699 and M430 are the airways. Now over here in this flight plan, you can see the waypoints, but you cannot see the airways. So if I go over here, airways, if I select it, you will see now all the airways. So I can click this option and the airways will disappear. That's it. And there is, let me just click this option as well, and fuel planning. So you can do the fuel planning over here, but it's kind of an advanced thing in which you actually specify how much fuel is required for the contingency and for the reserve, and how much will be required for the taxi fuel, and how much is for the block fuel and for the arrival. Maybe after some time when you are too much expert and you know how the plane burns the fuel and how to manage your flights, then maybe you can just change these settings. But for the time being, as a beginner, you can just ignore it and you can keep it at auto, because once you're entering your flight plan in the MCDU, it will actually do the flight planning for you, and you can always change it over there as well. But this Simbrief gives you a very good view. Now once you're done with the flight planning over here in this interface, you can generate the flight. But before this, I just remembered one thing, that the units are coming over here, kilograms and pounds. So I've been getting so many questions that the plane only gives the fuel calculation and the weight calculation in pounds. So if you're making a flight plan in Simbrief and your plane has got units in pounds, you can always change it. Now, in order to import this flight plan in the plane, you must generate this flight plan so that the electronic flight bag can get the flight plan. Now, I will click this button, generate flight, and it will generate the flight for me. That's it. So now you have got the complete flight info. You have the flight plan summary, and then you have the load sheet. You can click this option, view PDF, and you can view the operational flight plan, which is also available in the electronic flight bag of the plane. Now I'm going to go back to the cockpit and tell you how to configure the electronic flight bag or the tab, and then how to configure the MCDU. Now here I am, and first of all, I would just like to bring your attention to one thing. That if you look at these displays, the primary flight display and the navigation display, it's all red and nothing is coming up, because I haven't done the IRS alignment, which is the inertial reference system, or in this plane you will see ADIRS, which is Air Data Inertial Reference System. It is actually a system which provides the GPS coordinates to the flight management and guidance system, and the plane knows actually where it is, it gets the coordinates, and then it's easy for the plane to actually follow the flight plan. So that's why first of all you have to get the iris alignment. For the iris alignment, there are actually 3 knobs at the overhead panel which you can change to align, and then you will have the iris alignment. But before this, there's one setting that I want to show you in the electronic flight bag. Now over here, if you go to options, you will see that the iris alignment is coming and it says real, fast or instant. If you keep it at real, it will take roughly 7 to 8 minutes for the iris alignment to be completed. Fast roughly takes 2 to 3 minutes, or maybe I think 4 minutes. And instant, obviously it's done instantly. So for all my flights, I keep it at instant, because I'm just doing quick flights in order to prepare the videos for the tutorials. So that's why you can change it as per your convenience. Now for the iris alignment, just go over here on the overhead panel. You will see these 3 knobs, and these are for the iris alignment. You move them to nav 1, then you move the 3, and then 2. That's it. Now as the iris alignment was set to instant, so that's why it's done instantly. Otherwise it will take some time. Now let's go back to electronic flight bag and continue with the configuration of the electronic flight bag, because once you do the configurations over here, then you will be able to configure the MCDU. So before I proceed further with the flight planning over here, let me just take you through the options. First of all, you have to enter the Simbrief pilot ID. So in the Simbrief, you go to account settings, and over there, you will find this pilot ID. There's also a video on my channel in which I've told you how to actually connect it. You can get the pilot ID from there. It will be in numbers, and you can then enter it over here by clicking it over here, and then you can just type in the pilot ID. Then you have the tail number, and you can change it if you want. Then you have units, metrics in kilograms or in pounds. You can also change it. Iris alignment, I've told you. Link instruments, I've set it to no. But you can see there are two more options, captain and first officer. And the third one is captain, first officer and IS. Now, what is link instruments? Actually, right now, in this plane, the controls on the left-hand side are not mirrored on the right-hand side. Let's say if I change anything over here, especially the barometric pressure, in order to adjust the altimeter, you will see it's not changed over here. So I can just change it, and there is no impact. And let's see if I change the range over here on the navigation display, nothing happens over here on the right-hand side. So right now, the left-hand side and right-hand side are not mirrored. But if you want to mirror them, then you can select this option, captain and first officer. But I just try to keep it real, and I select no. Now there is another option, rudder controls tiller. Actually, in this plane, you have this option, which is known as the tiller, and it actually turns the plane left and right during the taxi. And let me just go out and show you how it's done. So this is the rudder, and right now, as the engines are not running, so the rudder will not move. But if I move my controller, this rudder actually moves left and right. There is also a video on my channel which I have told you how to actually configure this. And this is the front wheel, which is actually controlled by the tiller. So in the simulators, this rudder control is actually connected to the tiller. So during the taxi, if you move the rudder controller, the tiller also moves and the plane turns left and right. So this is the setting for it. If you want to watch a detailed video, it is there in my channel. I've just given the link in the comment section. Then again, auto tiller disconnect, just keep it yes. And use zero fuel weight entry, just also keep it yes. Because why do you set the zero fuel weight entry? Because what happens is this, that zero fuel weight of the plane is actually the weight of the plane plus passengers and plus cargo and freight and whatever the plane is carrying. But it ignores the weight of the fuel. So while adjusting the weight of the plane, you have to enter the fuel, and then instead of setting the cargo and the passengers separately, you simply adjust the zero fuel weight, and the passengers cargo is automatically adjusted. So that's why it's done. But right now I will be importing the flight plan from the Simbrief, so that's why it will be done automatically. Then you have default thrust reduction altitude. It is an altitude at which actually the thrust of the plane reduces. With the takeoff thrust, the plane should not go more than 5 minutes. So that's why you must have seen many videos over the YouTube that before the takeoff on the runway, the pilots actually turn on this option, chrono, in order to see the time, that how much time is taken. And within 5 minutes, they actually try to reduce the thrust. So that's why this altitude is coming. So at this altitude, you have to reduce the thrust. So for some airports or for some flights, it's 1,000. And for some, it's 1,500. But you can keep it at 1,500. Then you have this option of on-screen keyboard. You can disable it or you can enable it. If you disable it, then you can use your own keyboard to type in the information over here. And if you enable, then you will get it over here. Then you have reset brake temperature. So after the landing, if the brakes get heated up, you can always click this option to reset it. Then you have throttle settings. So if you open it, you can adjust the throttle. Right now I'm using the Thrustmaster TCA quadrant, and I also have the airons for the flaps and for the speed brakes. So it's configured, and there is also a video on my channel in which I've told you how to configure the Thrustmaster TCA quadrant. Sensitivity settings, I haven't changed them for my controller. So if you just go and watch that video, I will tell you how to do this configuration. That's it. Now coming to this point, the dashboard. Now let's start the flight planning. Over here you can import the flight plan from Simbrief. So click this option and you will get the flight plan. Now you have the departure, which is Dubai. You have arrival, Qatar. And then you have the META information or the weather information coming, OMDB. Then you have the time, you have the wind and speed, the type of clouds, temperature, and the QNH, or what you can say, the barometric pressure for the altimeter. You can update it during the flight if you want to update it. And this is for Qatar. And then you can also search for META. So let's say if I also want to search for Abu Dhabi International Airport, because that's the trick of having the on-screen keyboard. Let's search it, and you will also get the weather information. Now coming to this point, operational flight plan. This is the operational flight plan from Simbrief. You get the fuel information. Then you also have your route and plus the alternate. This is the route and this is the alternate. And then you have all the wind information and the weather information. You can go to top, and if you want to scroll, you can use these buttons. Now coming to this option ground, you can do some ground services from the electronic flight bag or the tab. Now these are the doors. If you click these options, the doors will open. So let's say if I open the front cargo door, will it open? Yes. Now it's open, and you can also open the rear and the back cargo doors. Now with this, you can start the ground services, toggle jetway, catering, luggage, and that's it. So now you can see that even the jetway is getting connected to the plane, and all the ground services have started. So this is a very good feature. I haven't been able to get the stairs with the default ground services option for the Microsoft Flight Simulator. Maybe if you know how to do that, you can just give me your input in the comment section. Now with this, you can see the chocks are there, and toggle GPU. Now GPU is actually a ground power unit which connects to the plane to provide electrical power to the plane once it's at the ground and the engines are not running, because engines provide power to the plane. So at the gate, this GPU is actually providing power to the plane. So once I will make this video how to start this plane from the cold and dark state, then you will also get a very clear understanding of it. But in order to have the external power, you turn on the GPU and then you turn on the external power in the plane. Then you have the control for the cabin lights. Now as the ground services are going on, I can adjust the payload. The payload is again one of the easiest things to do over here. Simply click this option. It will get you all the information from the Simbrief as per the flight plan, and you can apply the load. Now you can select this option instant, fast, or realistic. So if I click this option instant, it will be done instantly. And payload applied. That's it. So now you have the zero fuel weight. You have the fuel, block fuel for this flight. And then you have the gross weight, which is 65 tons or 65,478 kilograms. Then you have the dry weight, maximum weight, and this is the maximum to which you can go. And similarly, zero fuel weight and the fuel weight. Now over here, The gross weight center of gravity is coming, which is 28.3, and the zero fuel weight center of gravity is coming. So these all two readings are also coming over here. Now this is another option, panel state. You can set different panel states for this plane. So right now, just if I want to start the plane, I can click this option, ready for takeoff, and it will be ready for takeoff. And if I click this option on APU, then the ground power unit will actually be of no use anymore, because APU is the auxiliary power unit and the plane will be getting power from there. So these are the different states which you can change. Now coming to one of the most important things in the electronic flight bag is the takeoff performance calculation. You can do it over here. First, click sync. You will get the weather information, and then for the runway, if you go to the operational flight plan and if you forget which runway you selected, you can see the runway. That's 30 right. So I can go here and select the runway. So this is the best thing of having the electronic operational flight plan in the EFB, because then you don't really have to switch windows. You can see the operational flight plan over here. So once you have this, then you have to simply enter the weight. And one more thing, just have a look at the altimeter. 1003, just make sure this weather information is good and it matches with the one at the dashboard. Now for the weight, if you go to the payload, you will see the live gross weight is coming 65 tons. So it's 65.5 if I just round it off. So 65.5 and calculate. Now you will see, you will get these performance numbers, and plus before calculate, you can always change these options. Air conditioning, if you want to keep it off during the takeoff, you can keep it off. If you want to keep it on, you can keep it on. Anti-ice, right now for this flight, I'm keeping it off because it's really hot over here. I think we're reaching up almost up to 48 degrees centigrade. So that's why I keep the anti-ice off. And force toga, and this is what I'm just going to tell you right now. So in this side of the electronic flight bag, you will see that all the takeoff performance calculations are coming. And there's this option coming as flex, which is coming as 58 degrees centigrade. Now, this is actually an method which is known as the flex to temp in Airbus. And if you talk about the Boeing planes, if you are familiar with those planes, it's known as the assumed temperature method. So while calculating the takeoff performance, you assume that the outside temperature is higher than the actual one. And the flight management guidance system really thinks it's hot. It's like not 48 degrees, it's 58 degrees. So while calculating these speeds, it actually tries to calculate a reduced thrust on the takeoff. So that's why this flex temperature is coming. It saves fuel, and plus it puts less stress on the engines during the takeoff. But if you want to force toga, then you can turn it on. Toga means take off and go around. This is actually a thrust setting. So over here at the thrust levers, if I just show you, you have this option climb, you have flexed MCT, and then you have toga. So if I move it to toga like this, it's actually a maximum thrust. And you can take off like this because it's simulator, obviously, but it will not be fun. It will just take away the realism from the Microsoft Flight Simulator. So you actually, during the takeoff, you keep your thrust over here on flex MCT, which actually reduces the thrust for the takeoff. And why it's like this? Because, look, just giving you an idea that we have got a very long runway. So why put lots of pressure on the engine and just try to reach these speeds over here at this point and then take off, when you can just like relax the pressure on the engines, and then you can just take off at any point. So that's why it's done. Anyhow, in the Simbrief, you also have the takeoff performance calculator. There is also a video on my channel. I will also give you the link in the description. If you want to watch that video, you can do that. You can also get the takeoff and landing performance calculations from the Simbrief. But as now for the takeoff performance, you have this calculator over here in the electronic flight bag, so you can just stick to it. Now there are 3 speeds coming: V1, VR and V2. V1 is actually a speed before which you can decide to abort the takeoff. So if you don't want to take off, then you can just before the speed, you can just abort it. But if you cross this V1 speed, which is 150 knots, then you have to take off. Right now in this scenario, V1 and VR is the same, 150 and 150 knots. So you have to take off, and then you have to reach the speed V2, which is 152. So this is actually a speed the plane actually tries to reach after the takeoff. So in case if one engine fails or if there is any issue, let's say there is any issue in the plane and you want to just come back and land, so you should be at this speed or more than this speed. So that's why it comes over here. Then you have gross weight center of gravity, and then you have THS coming 0.8 up. This is actually the trim settings. So now I have completed the configuration for the electronic flight bag. Now it's time to go to the MCDU and carry on with the rest of the configurations. Now this is the MCDU, or the multifunction control and display unit. We're just showing you the aircraft, then the engine, and then you have the navigation database, which is updated from 31st of May to 13th of June. And that's it. And you can see this option coming as nav accuracy upgraded. It means that the navigation accuracy of the plane is high, because now you have the iris alignment complete. You can clear it, and then you can get rid of these options. If you go to this menu, MCDU menu, and ATSU, you will also see that pilot ID is coming. This is also the place where you have to put in your Simbrief pilot ID, so that the MCDU is also configured with it. Now, in order to, let's go to this page again, data. Now, in order to configure this MCDU, there is actually a sequence which you have to follow, and this sequence is known as diff strip. Diff stands actually for data, initialization, flight plan, secondary flight plan, and then you have radio, navigation, initialization B, and then you have performance. So this is the sequence for the diff strip. So first of all, you look at the data, and then you have all the information coming over here for the plane. GPS monitor, it's working or not, and stuff like this. It all comes over here. Now then, going to the first I, this is initialization. You have to initialize the flight over here. And if you see, this is option telling you that initialization request. And remember this thing, that whenever you're configuring the MCDU, there are 2 things which I will just tell you right now. Anything coming like this in boxes, you have to enter this information. It has to be entered. And if you see anything like this over here, it means this page also has got multiple pages. So this means you can scroll through the pages by pressing this button or by pressing this button. So this is left and right, and this is up and down. Okay. So for this, first of all, just press this option, initialization request, and the flight will be initialized. You will get the departure airport, the arrival, and then you have the alternate coming in, as I've selected auto. So that's why it was coming, I think, OEDF. Yes, and then you have the flight number. You can just enter any flight number, whatever you want. I use AA123, my initials. Then you have the cost index, 30. So as it was coming like this, in amber color, so you have to enter it over here. Then you have the iris initialization. You will see all the GPS coordinates are coming over here, iris 1, 2, and 3. It's properly aligned, and you get the position. So this is done. And then you have the wind information for the takeoff, because during the climb, the autopilot should know what is the condition of the wind in order to adjust the rudder and the trim of the plane. So that's why this information has to be updated. Yeah, you can always press this option, wind request, to get the wind. And if you go to this option, you will get the wind for the descent. Now just go back. Now I will move to the flight plan. And in the flight plan, you will see the flight plan is there. You have all the waypoints and the airways coming in, plus the heading and the distance. This distance is actually the distance from one waypoint to another, not the total distance of the flight. And then you have the total distance of the flight, and you have the arrival. Now, first of all, you have to actually enter the departure procedure and your runway for the takeoff. Go to this option, OMDB, select departure, and then you have the runway to be selected. Now, for this flight, I will be using runway 30 right, and you can also see that the ILS frequency is coming. In case if you want to just come back and land again, you have the ILS frequency coming over here. Then you have the heading of the runway 303, and this is the length of the runway. So you select 30 right, and then you have SIDS, standard instrument departure. So if you look at the flight plan, this is the SID that we will be using. In the operational flight plan, it has more letters in it. X is also appearing, but over here in the MCDU, due to the limited number of characters, you only get this. So you have to find the one. Just select this, and then you can see SID is coming, transition. In some cases, especially if you are flying in US, you will find that even for the departure, there are transitions. You have to select the transition. But right now, for this flight, there is no transition. And now I can press insert, and that's it. Now, talking about the transition, a few days back, somebody really came on my channel and said that for the initial approach fix, why do you call it the transition? Actually, this is how it appears over here in the MCDU, and you might be even thinking, what is a transition? Transition is actually a point where, let's say after the takeoff, you go to this departure procedure. So there is a point where the departure procedure starts. This is actually a transition while you are departing out of an airport. And for the arrival, there is also a transition. Transition is always the initial approach fix. And after the initial approach fix, you land at the runway, you go through the final approach fix, and then you land. So once your arrival ends, your approach starts, there is a point which is the transition point. It's very simple. And I just say it in my videos because this is how it appears over here in the MCDU. As a beginner, as I've got no knowledge of the aviation, and I've never been in a cockpit, only back in, I think, 88, I think it was 87 or 88. I was in Boeing 737-300. That was the first and the last time I was ever in a Boeing. And then I think back in 2017, I was in the 777-300. I was traveling in first class of Etihad, and I just requested the captain before the takeoff and the plane was at the ground, just wanted to take a picture of myself, and that's it. So these are the only 2 times I've been in a cockpit. Otherwise, I've not been there. So that's why when I do these flight plannings myself, I really get confused how to find these things. So I just try to explain them in detail, so that it's easy for the beginners to look for it. Now for the arrival, just click this option, and for the arrival, you will again see the runway, the length, and the heading. So I will be landing at runway 34 right, and then you have the stars, which is for the arrival, which is Tosna 1 hour. That's it. And then you have via. Let's say via, it's coming, and then this is Legma. This is actually the transition. And that's it. So now you have a complete flight plan coming over here. You have these constraints and the speed. And something really interesting I just wanted to tell you. These are actually the speeds, 190, 180, 220. So these are the speeds the plane should be at these points. And then you have this star coming over here, and you can see 3,500. Now this plane has got 2 modes, the Airbus A320. It's got the managed mode and the selected mode. In the managed mode, your climb rate or the descent rate is calculated by the MCDU itself. So you really don't have to enter the climb rate or the descent rate. It's done automatically. So if anything coming like this, it means that you will be flying in the managed mode, and the plane will be actually able to follow these constraints. And let's say during the descent, at this point, if you start the descent at the right point, then by this point, the plane will be actually at the flight level 200, which is 20,000. And similarly, This is all coming over here. And then you have the heading as well. Now there is something interesting. You will see this option as flight discontinuity and manual. Now what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go to the Simbrief, or rather Navigraph charts, and I will just show you the arrival and the approach, and this will give you a very good perspective. Now if you click this star, you will see the arrival procedure. So after Tosna, there is an arrival procedure coming over here. This will give you a really good perspective. Now the headings are coming. The distance is given. As you can see, 214 and so on and so forth. And flight levels are coming at two walks, flight level 1,180, 18,000 feet. And you can see there are two lines above and below. So it means you should be at 180 flight level or 18,000 feet. Then you have the speed coming. Over here, you can see at Afnan, 11,000 coming, but there's a line below. It means you should be 11,000 or above. And if the line is on top of it, let's say there's no line below 11,000 and there is a line at the top, it means 11,000 or below. So that's how you see it. So at these points, you can see there's a line above and below, which means 7,000. So these are all the arrival procedures that you have. Now the arrival actually transitions into approach. So that's why you have a transition point. And you can see legma. Because this is the runway, 34 right. I will be landing over here. And once I'm at this point, Muxt, my altitude should be between 3,500 and 2,500. And you can see it's written over here that for runway 34 right, expect 2,500. So if I'm going to land at 34 right, I should be at 2,500 because I'm expecting that from ATC. And for the approach, for the arrival at Muxt, maintain 156 degrees track, expect vectors. So what is this? Actually, by this point, when you reach over here, then the ATC actually takes you through the approach procedures. So they will give you the heading, and you will fly in the heading mode and you will go for the approach. Now let's go for the approach. If I click this button, I will see the approach. Now after Muxt, you come to this point, Legma, by following the heading. Because right now, as you can see, it's not connected. So this is not how this approach is actually flown. There is a video on my channel which I have done for the Airbus A310-300 by iniBuilds. In this video, I have actually shown you how to fly this approach when you have vectors of discontinuity in the MCDU, or your approach is like this, that you have to expect vectors from the ATC to land at a runway. So this is the initial approach, and then you go towards the final approach, which is HH911, and then afterwards you land. So that's why there will also be a discontinuity coming over there in the MCDU, and then Legma. So you select Legma as the transition because it's a transition from arrival to approach. I think I've explained it well, but still, if you've got any questions, you can ask me in the comment section, or if you want to add anything to this video, the comment section is always there for you. So now in the MCDU, you will see this thing is coming up, manual. So this is after Muxt. So this from this point onwards, you have to fly based on heading, and then you can go to this point Legma, and then we continue with the approach. You can keep the flight plan like this and then fly in the heading mode, or if you want to delete it, simply press this button clear, and you can delete manual. You cannot right now delete flight plan discontinuity. It's not allowed because there is this manual coming up. So clear it again, press this button clear, and just clear it. Manual is now off, and plus clear it, and now it's off. So now if you fly this flight, the autopilot will actually keep on flying. It will not go into this discontinuity phase, and because if the plane hits this discontinuity phase, it just keeps on flying straight. That's it. So once you have the flight plan over here in the MCDU, you can always go through the flight plan and just go over here in the EFS, which is the Electronic Flight Instrument System. You can bring this knob to plan, and then you can see how your flight plan is. So if I just go all the way back, Now if you zoom in, you can see it just like the one being shown in Simbrief or Navigraph, and you will see that all the waypoints are coming. This flight route is good, and you will see the approach and the arrival procedures. And plus now this line is connected. Otherwise, if there was a discontinuity, then it will appear. Let me just show you one more time. I'll just select the arrival again. You can always change it during the flight arrivals. And let's say if I select 34 right, again, I select toast now 1 hour, again. And if I select via, legma, insert, and if I just go through this flight plan again, you will see that there will be a discontinuity. Yes, just like this. So if there is a discontinuity in the flight plan, it will appear over here in the navigation display just like this. So after muxt, if you do not do anything, if you don't fly in the heading mode, the plane will actually keep on going straight and it will not turn right towards the approach. So over here at this point, you have to actually then fly in the heading mode. Right now this plane is in the manage mode. You can see this is the heading selector, and there are 3 dashes coming over here with the dot. So it means it's in the manage mode. So if you want to take it out of the manage mode, just bring your cursor over here, pull it out, press, and now you're in the heading mode. So till this point you will be flying in the manage mode. I think I cannot go back anyhow, but afterwards you have to then bring this plane into the heading mode, select the heading of the plane, and then you can fly, and then you can carry on with the approach. Now after the flight plan, you have secondary flight plan. If you look over here, you will get the secondary flight plan. This is actually a flight plan which is different than the actual flight plan. You can copy the active flight plan, and now the flight plan active is coming. You can change it. You can do anything over here. Let me just show you. It also appears over here, the navigation display like this in the white line, because this is not the active one. So if you go, let me just clear it. Secondary flight plan. You can always activate the secondary flight plan. You can go to this option, initialization. You can have a new flight plan with a different cost index and a cruising altitude. But for the secondary flight plan, let me just tell you one thing, that you can change the secondary flight plan at any time. You can add a waypoint or an airway, or you can even change the destination. So let's say if you are flying and at this point you decide to go back. So let's say at this point I just decide to go back to Dubai. I can just enter OMDB and new destination. I can just put it over here. And now after Oksari, I'm just going back to OMDB. It will just appear over here. I'll just show you. And then you can select the arrival. Let's say if I select ILS runway 20 right, and yeah, and this is the one. 3E and vias, redirect, and insert. And then you have a flight plan discontinuity. I can clear it, and that's it. So if I just go back, you will see after this point, I can just go back. Okay. So now this green part is telling me that I have a flight to follow, which is there in the primary flight plan. But this white line is telling me that I will change my flight. So I will just come all the way here. Then at this point, I will just go back like this straight, because I haven't entered anything. And if at any point, if I click activate secondary, the secondary flight plan will actually become my primary flight plan. But I'm not going to do this, and I can always delete it. Now after the secondary flight plan, you have RadNav, which is actually radio and navigation. Over here, you can enter the frequency for the VOR. So why do you need a VOR? VOR is actually a very high frequency omnidirectional radio, and it's actually a radio which emits ranges, radio frequency in all the directions. Planes actually follow them. It's an older way of carrying out a navigation. So let's say if the navigation system of the plane is down, which is the GPS navigation, then you might try to tune into the VOR and then do the flight accordingly. Right now, this is not the topic of the video, and obviously you will not be flying this plane based on the VOR navigation, so that's why I'm just going to skip it. But this is just one thing I just wanted to bring your attention to. Then you have the ILS frequency and the course. So you can enter the ILS frequency and the course for the approach. So right now in this video, I'm not going to change it. Once I will upload a video for the descent management, ILS approach and landing, then I will tell you how to configure this. Then after this radio option, you have to go to initialization B. So come to this point, initialization, press this button, and then you go to the initialization B page. Now over here, you have to enter the zero fuel weight, center of gravity, and block fuel. Simply click this and it will get the block fuel. Now if you look at over here, you will see the fuel on board is coming, which is 5.14 tons, and it is exactly 5.1 coming over here. And then you have the zero fuel weight, then the takeoff weight is coming and the landing weight is coming as per the electronic flight bag. And then you have the fuel for the extra time, 1.8 tons, 24 minutes. And then you have the fuel for the taxi for the trip, 1.3 tons, total time 48 minutes. You have for reserve, 5% fuel is kept for reserve. You can change it. And then for the alternate, 12 minutes extra, 0.9 tons, and then so on and so forth. So you get all this calculation done automatically over here on this page. Now coming to the last option, performance, you simply come over here and then you have to do one thing. Go to the electronic flight bag and send to FMGS, which is Flight Management Guidance System, and that's it, data sent to MCDU. Now I will just come over here and I will see this option, confirm to data, and I will click this, and that's it. Now you can see V1, VR, and V2 is there. Transition altitude is also there. What is the transition altitude? So once you're flying out of an airport, you have your altimeter adjusted as per the barometric pressure. So at this point, you actually set it to standard. So if I bring my cursor over here and when I see the down arrow, it's adjusted. And then you can just bring it back to the one that you have set once you see the up arrow. So once you pull it out, you get to standard, you push it in, you get the given one. So this is the basically transition altitude is the altitude at which you go to the standard. So this is given in the standard instrument departure page. So you can see the transition altitude is coming as 13,000 feet. So you can always refer to the standard instrument departure and you can get this altitude. But you can change it. Let's say if it was 15,000, just showing you for this video, you can just do it. Thrust reduction altitude is also coming. I've explained it before. This is the altitude at which you reduce the thrust. And then you have the flaps. Flaps set to 1. And then you have the THS 0.8 up. So you can enter it like this. 1/0.8 up. And that's it. But over here it comes as up 0.8. You can enter it in this format as well. And that's it. And then the flex to temp is also coming. And now as the engines are not running, you cannot see this calculation over here. But once you have the flex to temp, then you will see the amount of thrust given. I think at 58 degrees, the thrust given is like, and 1% comes at like 78% or 80% thrust. That's it. So now I have told you how to make the flight plan in Simbrief, how to configure the electronic flight bag, and how to configure the MCDU of this plane. I think I've explained everything in detail. I'm always doing these videos on the weekend so that I'm just focused. There's no work, no call is coming, and I can just relax, sit down, and just explain everything in detail. Because as a beginner, there are many things you really have to understand in order to do the flights. It has taken me a lot of time to basically learn all these things and to understand. So that's why I just try to keep everything very clear. So I hope you would have learned a lot from this video. But still, if you've got any questions, the comment section is there for you. Or if you want to add anything to this video, the comment section is there for you. Thank you very much for staying with me. Have a nice day. Hope to see you soon.